Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Are black triangle UFOs ours or theirs? What's it like to have your mother involved in secret government work? What is the Mutual UFO Network all about?
Hello and welcome to the 969th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, coming to you from WOON AM and FM radio in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, on the Paranormal Radio app, from TalkStream Live, on YouTube, and via TuneIn.com. I'm Ben, that was Paul, and today we welcome a new guest on a fascinating topic.
Earl Grey Anderson is the Mutual UFO Network State Director for Southern California and is MUFON's Chief Investigator there. He appears regularly in the media, including the Travel Channel's Storming Area 51 special, and on the lecture circuit. He also serves on MUFON's STAR team and Experiencer Resource team. Earl is also a composer and recording artist based in Los Angeles, half of the Piper Gray artistic duo. Anyway, two of Earl's songs appear in the indie Australian film Gascoigne, directed by Peter McGinnis. Gee, read your script beforehand, Paul.
It happens to the best of us, Father. So, Earl Grey Anderson, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Hi there, you guys. I got to correct one thing, or my chief investigator is going to be mad, because I became state director about a year and a half ago. And I actually, Gene Marigolano is my new chief investigator. I had to kind of spread the wealth there, wanted to spread the wealth.
Okay, so, well, our apologies. Okay.
Sorry, Gino. And he's a wonderful, wonderful chief investigator. So
outstanding.
Well, I guess we'll hop right into it. So, unlike most UFO authorities, you got your start from your mother. So, based on something she didn't think you would remember, so could you tell us the tale?
Sure. I'd love to. I've certainly talked about it a lot in the past, too, with people. It really is my origin story, I guess, if there's, a starting point for my interest in the UFO phenomena and all things outer space. When I was 5 years old, my mom, I'll never forget this. We were in the kitchen. We had this, the walls were painted yellow, kind of bright colors, in Venice, California. And my mom started talking about this strange stuff that she had been involved with. Now, we knew that Mom had worked for Howard Hughes. She worked for Hughes Aircraft, the old Sepulveda site out there, sort of near the airport, between Hollywood and the airport there. This was back in the mid-1950s, and that was, we knew about that. The whole family knew, and it was interesting, but there was nothing anomalous about that. But Mom started talking about how she was taken out by this security team once to the middle of the desert. And she said, well, there was this elevator in this bunker, middle of nowhere. She said the Great American Desert. I still don't know which Great American Desert that was. It could have been White Sands. It could have been Area 51. I know that Hughes had he had the first privately owned lab over at Area 51. That has been released. I talked to Richard Souder about this before, who's an authority on deep underground military bases. But I think that Mom she thought it was safe talking to me because I was a little kid. Later on, she said that, she thought that I would never have remembered it. And that's why, because she had signed NDAs, and some very significant ones, I'm sure. But she said that she got in the elevator. She didn't know how far down this was going to go. She just thought maybe a couple of floors. And it kept going down. It kind of quite a clip. And she felt scared. She said that she felt butterflies in her stomach, is how she described it. I guess vertigo would be the term. But she said that when the elevator finally stopped, and it was about a mile under the desert floor, she said, that the doors opened up and that there was a little bustling city under the Great American Desert. She said that there were people that lived down there for long periods of time. She mentioned German rocket scientists here and there. I remember, like Werner von Braun would come on to Disney, Wonderful World of Color or something, and my mom.
I remember that.
Yeah, but Mom would say, "Oh, there's my old friend Werner," but she said that they had little cafes down there. She said that there was one that had little umbrellas over the tables, and she said that she thought that was so funny because you don't need an umbrella in a cave. Now, my mom never talked about exactly what she was working on down there, but just observing my mom and her work over the years, she retired from Hughes in 1958 to become a full-time mom and a housewife. She thought she did this for probably up until about 1970. But then she began working privately. She at first worked for an employment agency called Manpower. She had her own office here. She opened the office in Thousand Oaks, California. But in a way, that was a kind of a front or cover for what she was doing. What she was really doing was she was kind of a headhunter for aerospace. She was constantly getting jobs for rocket scientists, aerospace engineers, for the likes of Lockheed, Rockwell, and Raytheon, you name it, Aerojet. She was involved with all those different companies. And recently I've had a couple of officials who've actually kind of cracked my mom's file for me a little bit, just enough to tell me, yeah, your mom was well respected in her field. You come from, your bloodline is interesting. But then that's kind of all they'll tell me. They won't read any more.
That's enough.
Because they'll say that the file is sealed, is what I'm told.
Gee. Okay, well, why don't we go right to some questions from listeners, and then we'll get into some of our own.
Sure.
We have been missing Peter Shelley from Bogota, Colombia, one of our guest co-hosts from time to time. And he always sends in really good questions. Ben, if you would, please.
Sure thing. And the question is, please ask Earl one. There's two questions, so we'll start with the first one because that's a very good place to start. Paul shared that MUFON has recently indicated no paranormal will be permitted in reports. What is the dividing line between the paranormal and UFO phenomena? And what is the backstory behind this decision?
Wow, we went right to
right to the meat and potatoes
question.
Here. Yeah.
Well, MUFON's mission statement is the investigation of UFOs for the benefit of humanity, and paranormal is kind of its own distinct thing. Now, I know that Steve Hudgens, who is our director of investigations, that he believes that the paranormal is real. I mean, many of us at MUFON have worked in paranormal areas, but I think that they want MUFON to be focused on the, on UFOs and that whole phenomenon. And they're not saying that the paranormal isn't real. I've personally seen things that I would consider paranormal myself, and also, people who have been abducted or have been visited by entities oftentimes will have what I guess best could be described as poltergeist-like activities that happen afterwards. Things will fly off shelves, lights will turn off and on, television will turn off and on, change stations. I mean, it can be very spooky. So I think that there's a fine line there, and you have to recognize that. But I think that the main thing is that MUFON wants to designate itself as a serious scientific organization that uses a scientific method. So when we bump into something that would be considered paranormal, I mean, my feeling about the paranormal is we have to expand our ideas of what normal is. It's para-nothing. It's part of this thing that we call life and existence.
Yeah, agreed.
And I mean, if you'd shown a cell phone to Leonardo da Vinci or somebody, they would have thought that was paranormal. They would think that was witchcraft at one time. And as we know, it's just, high technology.
Well, da Vinci would have wanted to have known the phone number.
Yes, that's true. Well, anyway, I hope that answers this gentleman's questions. I have no problem with paranormal stuff. It's just not what MUFON does. I mean, I'll have people sometimes call and they'll want me to investigate their ghost sighting, or they'll start talking about something that sounds more like demon oppression than visitation from extraterrestrial life, And what I'll usually do is I usually send them over to you, Paul, is what I do. Now, Paul's got two hats. He handles the paranormal as well as this strange UFO phenomenon.
Well, I'm the guy who thinks demons are actually aliens.
and that's funny. Officialdom, that's a problem with them. Some of them think that aliens are demons, and that's why they didn't.
Well, with my seminary background, that's what people think I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have another question from Peter. Oh, no, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I never even talked about, my mom, another thing that happened with my mom and what led me to be so interested in this is that my mom said that there was such a thing as extraterrestrial life. That was another little, blip that she gave me that haunted me all my life. And I kept asking her and questioning her about it. And, when I was in fourth grade, I went and I did a little essay in front of my class, and talked about, it was what does your mom do and what does your dad do? And I talked about my dad, who was a landscaper, and then I talked about my mom, who used to work in a deep underground military base and said that ETs were real and the government knew that they were real and here. And so the teacher called for a parent-teacher conference. My mom came in. I was 10 years old, and we're driving home. I'm driving home with my mom after the conference. She was talking with the teacher while I was playing on the playground equipment. And I'll never forget, because on the way home she said, she wasn't mad, but she said, son, people out there don't know about this, what I told you. And she said, my God, how do you even remember that? She said, you were just a baby when I told you about this. And she said, that your mom could get into really, really bad trouble. Your mom could go to prison if you talk about it. So you can't ever talk about this again. And for God's sake, not at school, and not in front of your class.
Oh, dear.
But that was kind of the initiation for me in this whole realm, and what led me to become a MUFON field investigator, and now, that I am the state director of Southern California, which I'm very proud of. We're very busy here. Next question. I just wanted to get the second half of, you wanted my origin story, and I only gave you like the first half of it.
Hey, it was worth the wait. So the second question is, are there any abduction cases you've dealt with where the entities appear to have a goal other than collecting human reproductive material? If so, can you give any interesting examples?
Yeah, all the time. I think Paul is probably aware of this as well. We've seen a sharp decline in the DNA farming that was so prevalent, up through, I don't know, even up until maybe 6 years ago. When I first got into joined the ERT, we would still get quite a few DNA farming cases where the person would be paralyzed. They would take blood or semen or ovum from, if it was a woman, and that seemed to be the main, the gist of what was going on. What we see more of now are people are given teachable downloads. They're given sometimes arcane knowledge. I had one police officer who was abducted from his cruiser while on duty, and he had to explain this to his other colleagues. because he was not. He said, "Yeah, I don't lie. I had to tell him what happened, and there was a joke around the police station: leave it to you to get abducted while on duty." But for him, he had this download of high mathematics. He believed that it had something to do with 0-point energy. And this took place over a month. Every single night he'd go to sleep and he would have a hyper-real dream and it's funny, you know, I mean, and I don't think that this is the way that ETs, I don't think they're in a schoolroom teaching us, but this was the mental image that he was given to understand what was happening. He would see this little diminutive gray hand holding a pointer, and it was teaching him on a blackboard all of these high mathematic equations. Now, he told me that, here's the problem, I was a D student in math. But somehow or another, over the course of this month, I understood all of these just crazy concepts, and I think that it could revolutionize our energy situation and change life on Earth. Well, after a month, it all stopped, and he was given this telepathic message by the entities that said, okay, this will come back to you when it's needed. You can interpret that however you would like. Now, I don't know when that's going to be needed and why this would take a month to do. But this was a decorated police officer. He was all business. He didn't want to talk about flaky stuff. He was very serious about it and just said, it was kind of like just the facts, you know, sir. And he wanted to have a contact for somebody that could hypnotically regress him, which I did. I gave him that contact. We have some of those. They're not part of MUFON, you know, it's kind of out of pocket for a person. But he wanted that, and anyway, that's more like some of the more recent abductions. It seems like people are just kind of being changed. We hear a lot of people are left with messages against nuclear weapons, against trashing our ecology of our planet, and it seems like that's the way that this has changed. It's personal contact, but I think it's more about the soul of humanity.
That's an interesting phrase, because arguably, if these things are entirely alien, right? I've made this point before to a couple of different bigwigs, which is, I like to point this out. Anyone who's been a listener for a while, I always like to point out this essay that was written by this philosopher named Nagel, and it was called "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" And it was basically a study on, can we know what it's like to be a bat? And the answer is no. We can know how to be a human consciousness inside of a bat body, but we will never know what it is like to have the instincts of a bat, to fly like a bat, we can be like, we can be a human consciousness saying, I'm doing bat things. But we do not know the essence of being a bat. And just like we do not know the essence of being a bat, we do not know the essence of ETs. We can never know what it is like to be ETs. We can never know what it is like to be a ghost. Well, maybe. But we can never know what it is like to be, something that's other than ourselves. And unfortunately for us, all of our experience is distilled entirely through our perception of reality, which puts us at a tremendous disadvantage. Because unfortunately, we all of our experiences inform our opinions on things. And so when it comes to, I'm always very skeptical of ETs saying, it's for the good of your planet. And it's like, well, why would they care? Is my first question. Is, okay, well, they're nice, they don't want us to blow each other up. Well, why? What do they gain from this? Arguably, if they're not human, they would have a different set of morals than we do. And I would like to point out that I think it's very strange that maybe it's because I'm a paranoid person, and that could very well be it.
Probably because of your father.
It could be, but I'm very distrustful of things that say, we're there for your good and the good of your planet. And it just seems like if that's the case, then why don't I I've made this argument before and been basically told, well, it's kind of the same thing about God, but why don't they just come down and stop it? Do something about it, rather than work through regular, everyday people who have no say in anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think my feelings about our visitors, I kind of align with Jacques Vallée a lot in my views. I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I think that this is an aspect of a phenomena that's been here with us since time immemorable. I think that if you look through records, the Rand Corporation, which was a part of Hughes aircraft up until the early 60s, they used to give a pamphlet out to new employees that talked about the UFO phenomenon. It brought up, sightings back in history, and I think that if you look at for instance, petroglyphs and stories from the Mesoamericas from antiquity, and you look at the stories of the Australian Aboriginals, and I mean they're talking about the same thing. They're talking about an intelligence that came out of the sky that was godlike, that gave them language, society, hunting skills, and in the Aboriginals' case. And you see the same petroglyphs worldwide. Now, of course, officialdom is trying to rebrand this whole thing. UFO is now UAP. The Air Force and the Navy and elsewhere, they're acting like this is some kind of new phenomena, that what they saw with the Tic Tac incident off of Catalina Island here was something new. But I've got records of stuff like that happening forever and ever out here.
Yeah.
So I think this is their way of dealing with something that's older than old. And now, what if the ET? I use the word ET because it works, but they may be dimensional. I'm not opposed to the idea of it even being us from the future, trying to bootstrap us to a certain place that we should be at by now. Or, it may be ETs from another planet. But like Jacques Vallée said himself, he said, if I find out that it's just entities from another planet, I'm going to be disappointed. just aliens, but I think that it's, that alien, the term ET alien is a good reference point for us, but I don't know that is, I think that that's just kind of, the surface of this phenomena. I think it goes way deep, and what if they had hand in creating us? That's not out of the question. They may have been here long enough that they helped us along in evolution, and now we've kind of hit a wall. We're still acting like barbarians, but we're ready to become like Star Trek with our technology. And there's concern because we're not quite where we're supposed to be yet. Well, this phenomena might even be a control system built into evolution, just like you have control systems built into your computer software to catch snafus before they, destroy your computer.
No, I guess that's a good point. But I always find it unnerving that, we don't have or it's like it's a technological thing we need to push us forward. But as I've heard a lot of people who are much smarter than I am point out that, as much as technology has changed, we as humans really have not. And, if you take the iPhone out of our hands, right, it's just like you put a rock in there, nothing really changes. It's
there's a TV commercial like that right now. A guy's in a museum looking at caveman holding a rock, and the guy has the same hairstyle, but he's taking a photo with his iPhone. I forget what the commercial was for, and I don't want to give product placement on here anyway. So, but I thought that it makes me laugh every time I see it.
I didn't even mean to do that.
Well, I wanted to, if I could back up just a bit. It was interesting that Ben brought up bats. When you mentioned the umbrellas over the table in the cave, the first thing that came to mind, maybe there were bats hanging above it. from the ceiling. Or there. Anyway, on that note,
You would not
They
like
were
guano
just
in
trying
your
to make
guacamole.
people feel at home.
Right.
That's my feeling. That they had a bowling alley. My mom said there was somebody that they had a barber shop, and the guy knew how to do her hair for her. I imagine as time went on, they probably had a beauty shop down there as well. But I think my mom might have been one of the early women that was involved in this sort of underground, quite literally, thing that
right.
officialdom's part of.
Well, on that note, let's take our mid-show break. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM and on various internet platforms as well. In New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley, we'll be right back with our great guest, Earl Grey Anderson. So stick with us.
The Woonsocket Board of Canvassers would like to remind voters that November 8th is Election Day. The voters of Woonsocket will be voting on races from U.S. Congress to school committee with 3 state referenda questions. In addition, there will be 2 local referenda questions on the ballot. Question 4, an amendment to the Woonsocket Home Rule Charter, regards the appointment of the city solicitor and reads, shall the City of Woonsocket Home Rule Charter, Chapter 10, entitled Administrative Departments, Article 1, entitled Law Department, Section 1, entitled Created Appointment Qualifications of Head, be amended to change the authorization for appointment of the city solicitor from the appointment by the mayor to appointment by the city council. You may approve or reject that question. Question 5 is entitled Relating to Cannabis Establishments and Public Use. And the question reads, shall new cannabis-related licenses for businesses involved in the cultivation, manufacture, laboratory testing, and for the retail sale of adult recreational use cannabis be issued in the city of Woonsocket? You may approve or reject that question. Knowing your options, early in person or election day, please vote. If you'd like more information on the election, you can visit the website of the Woonsocket Board of Canvassers at www.woonsocketri.org or call the office at 401-767-9223. Local and live at 99.5 FM.
And we're back on WOON AM and FM, and it's Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno with our great guest today, Earl Grey Anderson. And now, Earl, we have another question for you. Ben, I'll hand you the whole iPad here.
Ooh, technology.
And this is from Todd. I can't remember where Todd's from.
Todd from somewhere writes to us.
Mr. Anderson, it starts.
Mr. Anderson. So California has always been...
Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So California has always been represented by the complete spectrum of paranormal phenomena. Do you think the alleged USO activity off the coast may be located near some Earth energy or window area?
Well, I think that we don't have the right term. That may be the best terminology we have for it. I hear about vortices. I hear about, portals and things like that. But there's no real scientific word for it yet. Perhaps, Einstein-Rosen bridge or a wormhole would be the closest thing. I do know that Kevin Day had his group go off of Seal Beach there, and they had a very, very impressive cadre of scientists that were out on this boat where they had monitors. And they saw detected stuff coming out of the ocean and hovering there, and we get many reports like that from to MUFON as well. And they detected gamma rays coming from this. Now that I guess that you would get gamma rays if you opened up a mini black hole, or if you're utilizing mini black hole technology, perhaps even with propulsion. I know that. My friend Rich Hoffman, with his group, they put out a paper about the Tic Tac incident, and one of the scientists thought that perhaps this object was using a black hole, creating a gravity well, and this object was constantly falling into this gravity well. That's how it reached speeds like Mach 18. Although we still can't explain why it didn't create 18 sonic booms. I mean, the thing was traveling Mach 18. Should have been 18 sonic booms, but I think these things carry their own, maybe they make their own little universe, and it has like encapsulation. It's very strange, but I know Rich felt like this technology was at least 4,000 years ahead of our own.
Yeah.
So, but we see a lot of, I have pilots putting in reports. I had one commercial pilot who was on East Catalina Island with his wife and brother-in-law, and they saw this gold sphere like 300 feet across. It was self-illuminated, come out of the ocean. This guy was very good at dead reckoning because he was a professional observer. He's a commercial pilot, and he had a run that went along the California coastline. So he said that this object was exactly 10 miles off of the Catalina coast and probably exactly 10 miles off of the mainland, sort of equidistant from both. And he watched this thing come up out of the water. It did sort of a crosswise dance, and then it shot back down into the water. In the meantime, he called his wife and his brother-in-law out, and he thought that, well, darn, I wish they had seen this. Well, it did it again, and it had 3 pair of eyes on it. I did, talk with all 3 witnesses. And later on, I found out that the coordinates for this guy's sighting were exactly the same coordinates of where the Tic Tac was first seen. I got that from Kevin Day himself. He was the strike force commander on the Princeton at the radar deck, and he knew the coordinates. And I gave them to him of this sighting. He said, "That's funny, Earl. That's exactly the same coordinates of where we saw this thing." So maybe it is something that we don't have a word for yet. It's some kind of science that is above our own perception of what's possible. So it looks very strange to us. It seems impossible. But again, I'll bring up the iPhone with Leonardo da Vinci. Right. I don't think it's demonic. I don't think it's, ghosts. And I don't even know that it's, the idea of ETs the way that we conceptualize them. It may be something that is just that far beyond our ability of even understanding. But it's there and it's happening. And we see it, we see many cases with similarities from that area. I had a boat captain with his crew that there was a full moon in the sky, and then suddenly there was another full moon that was like getting closer to the ship, and these guys were cowering on the deck. They thought they were under attack, and then this thing took off. But it's not unusual. It's that little area between Catalina Island and the Baja Peninsula. It's very, very active, and yeah. I think the military knows about it, and NORAD knows about it, and MUFON knows about it.
Okay, well, we're having an easy show today, Ben. We have another question from Peter.
We do, and the question is, can you explain your knowledge of the Ambient Monitoring Project?
That I'm not... what is there another name for it? You're not hitting any bells there.
I actually know nothing about it.
I don't.
Peter, if you're listening, which you definitely are, if you want to shoot us a little explanation, feel free to. He's typing right now, and I will tell you in a second.
Oh, okay.
The wonder of modern technology. See, I've switched this out for a rock. I wouldn't be able to know anything. Wouldn't be able to divine. Well, I could use divination or something.
But yeah, you could at least we could drill a new well that way.
That's very true. Yes. But we don't have our dowsing rods, so therefore we will not be able to do that. But yeah, so I guess it's something I'd like to know more about. Oh, he said it's the name for the abductee monitoring with sensor boxes in houses.
Oh, okay. I've heard about that. I don't know that this can be monitored. I've had people talk about building Faraday cages around their beds and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah, and it reminds me of Better Call Saul. Where
his
brother would cover himself in tinfoil, and there are people that do that apparently, and I don't think it's going to work. I think that if they want you, they're going to get you. And I know that people react differently to this. Flight is like the first human reaction for something that we're unfamiliar with. We either run from it, or we put our dukes up, or we pull. I've had people say that they wanted to be able to shoot aliens. There's one guy that was sleeping with his gun, and I told him, for God's sake, don't, if you get a round off, it's going to go through the wall and hit your neighbor,
Right, yeah.
And I don't know that guns will work. It's like throwing a spear at a battleship, come on.
I know.
So,
you're not some.
I don't think that you can stop them, and I don't know that you can monitor it. Maybe, I don't know. I just don't think that that's going to work.
Well, I think that's kind of one of the hardest things, right? Is trying to measure the human experience and trying to get statistical data out of it. Which people like Kathleen Martin, they're done a great job, gathering as much data as they have. It's honestly very impressive. The only thing that kind of is sort of the one sort of pitfall of it is it's, which I don't even know if I'd call it a pitfall. It's just, I guess it depends on who you're trying to gather the data for. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, who are you trying to prove this to? So to some people, all the data is, wow, this is a lot, and there's a lot of really good information here. And other people, it's like, well, I mean, it's all circumstantial. Like, you know what I mean?
When you have, the cases that I get, when I first went into this thing like 8 years ago. I remember one Australian woman in particular that just said, I can't believe you're falling for this stuff. And, it's just rubbish. And the only people that see UFOs and that get abducted are hillbillies. And excuse me, no. More times than not, I'll be listening to a person's story, and it's an aerospace engineer or a doctor or a psychologist or somebody who's a Harvard professor or a local, professor at one of our major universities here. It seems like, if anything, they're trying to, it seems like the smart and learned people seem to get tagged more often than not. And it's, I think that it's just the strangest phenomenon. We want to deal with it like humans usually do deal with things, and I don't know that you can put this under the microscope. That's what I found. It's not like we are apart from this phenomena looking in through a microscope, but something on a slide. As soon as you start, disturbing the universe, it kind of pokes back. That's the whole idea in physics, where they had to come up with a bogus word, wavicle, because depending on what the scientist was expecting to see in a photon of light in the, twin slit experiment, if he was expecting it to act like a wave, he would see a waveform. If he was expecting to see particulate action, he would see that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an interactive phenomena. It's not like the other stuff that we deal with. Or maybe it is. Maybe we can learn how to look at other stuff the same way and have more success in our sciences. But it's a strange phenomena. I don't think that you can treat it like, but you're not going to put monitors up and catch it that way.
Oh, as a follow-up to the ambient monitoring project, Peter also wrote that it was a special MUFON project authored by project director Tom Dooley on a longtime member of the MUFON board.
And MUFON has a big tent, and there are a lot of different. My feelings about the phenomena are not the official feelings of MUFON. The only official opinion of MUFON is that we are scientifically investigating UFOs for the benefit of humanity. Period. That's it. And that leaves a lot of wiggle room for views. I have colleagues that feel like this is an invasion from outer space that we need to protect ourselves from. I have other people that think that it's space brothers. I kind of fall in the middle, and I think that just observing humanity, we have our angels and our devils amongst ourselves, and you didn't need the devil to have that, Just human selfishness creates bad actors out there, and so it's probably the same out in the greater universe. You probably have something a lot like the way we are, but perhaps they've learned to curtail some of their bad behaviors, I hope. But that doesn't mean we're not going to meet carpetbaggers and DNA thieves and things like that along the way. I think that's probably part of this. But I don't think that's the sum total of it either. Just like that's not the sum total of humanity is at the Manson family,
Right.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems like maybe it is, but
Yeah.
you turn on the news, but
Well, that's my profession, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I should mention that Earl is coming to us via Skype today. I should mention that earlier, but there we are. And thank you to Skype. So we've begun already to talk about MUFON, and everybody's heard of it, Mutual UFO Network. Tell us how MUFON got started and how it works. As you say, it's a big tent.
Mm-hmm. It was originally the Midwestern UFO Network, and that was back before 1969. And 1969 Project Blue Book, which was, of course, the Air Force's official gaze into this strange phenomena, headed up by J. Allen Hynek. Paul Hynek is a very, very close personal friend of mine. We'll go out for a beer and stuff. That's, Paul Hynek and I. But when Project Blue Book shut their doors, MUFON became the Mutual UFO Network. This was 1969. And so we've been doing the Air Force's job since 1969, 55 years ago now. And it's, again, I think that our creed, the scientific investigation of UFOs for the benefit of humanity is a good encapsulation of what we do. Over the course of the years, I think that you've seen MUFON has been tip of the spear. You'll see it in literature going back, that many years ago. And I found MUFON to be the best way to investigate this phenomena. Before, I was sort of the armchair guy. I had the stuff that my mom talked about. He didn't even talk about, when I took my mom to see Star Wars back in 1977, she the dam broke. For some reason, she just started talking about the phenomena. She said, son, you have no idea, the Star Wars isn't that far-fetched. The different races, the spaceships and all that. She said, it's a real thing. It's realer than you will ever know. She said, they'll never tell the public. They're afraid of how the public will react. And that's, it's the strangest phenomena. It seems to have its tendrils into everything nowadays. I mean, you turn on TV and you'll see little gray aliens pitching insurance companies. It's like it's just kind of a meme now because it's such a deep, it's just deeply embedded, I think, in the human psyche at this point. And but MUFON, I think, does a beautiful job of corralling people of different views together under the same tent, and that's kind of what we need to understand this thing. I don't think that any one particular person has all the pieces to the puzzle. I think that it takes a community, it takes a bunch of us to understand this thing, and that's where MUFON works beautifully. And they taught me, the field investigator handbook is wonderful, and a friend of mine, Ron Rager, had a hand in writing that, and it's just he used to work. He was a guy that did the wiring on the Saturn IV booster, not Saturn V, but the Saturn IV, and then he worked on Skylab and things like that, and worked at Aerojet, and you've got people that are aerospace engineers that are take this phenomena very, very seriously. And those are the guys.
Caliber people, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're the guys that pitch into MUFON and make this organization an excellent organization.
Yeah, I agree. Now, as far as the area of the MUFON that excuse me, you and I are both involved with in a deeper sense, the Experience or Resource Team. Could you talk about that?
Yes. Well, the Experiencer Resource Team, we were called the Experiencer Research Team, but it wasn't a good, it was a good acronym, but it wasn't a good explanation of what we actually do. Because rather than research, we seem to be more like social workers for people who have had ET contact or anomalous contact, and people will be left with PTSD afterwards, or as Dr. John Mack described it, ontological shock, where their idea and concept of reality is pulled out from under themselves, and they're kind of left there, without a center of balance. And that's where we come in. We listen to them. We're non-judgmental listeners. And if the person has a burning desire to be hypnotically regressed, to get to hidden memories, we have a list of people that we've vetted to the best of our abilities that we can, send them to somebody within hopefully reasonable. There are some states where we don't have anybody that can do that. But we also have, there are experiencer support groups that are out there. Les Velez has a great one. Gwen Farrell has an amazing support group that she leads, and they do these on Zoom, on the Zoom platform now. So you can attend. It's like being in a meeting with people from all over the map who have had similar contact as to that you've had if you're an experiencer. And many of us that are in the ERT, the way that I got in, I talked to Kathleen because my wife and I had an anomalous experience where our room flooded with light, and I saw beings and the whole thing. And it was shocking because I was a nuts and bolts guy. It changed my whole view of this thing, and I maybe was targeted because of my mom. I'm not sure, but there seems to be a interest in family lines and certain bloodlines. So, but for whatever reason, this happened, and other people were not necessarily taking me seriously because here you have a new field investigator. And he's suddenly saying, "Oh my God, I met aliens and it was scary. What do I do?" Kathleen Martin, I'd sent cases to her before. I had worked on a couple of abduction cases. I contacted her, and we met for lunch at Alien Con. This was about 5.5 years ago now, and I, she was really, really helpful. She listened to what I was saying, and she gave me other examples of similar situations, and she took me seriously. She didn't act like I was some crazy person. And then after we finished talking, I said, I might want to join the ERT someday. And she said, "Well, what do you think we were just doing?" And that was an interview. And so it was from that point on that, they kind of let me in the gate, and I love working with the ERT. I love the high strangeness cases. I think that this phenomena is intentionally absurd sometimes. I'll have a perfect case, and then there'll be this absurdity in it. And I think that maybe it's the universe winking at us, and nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And I think that this phenomena has always been here. I don't think it's anything new. Anyway, I love being an ERT member. I hear the best contact stories, and I talked with a gentleman a couple days ago. I won't let you guys know names or where the guy is, but he had a contact experience in 1952 when he was 10 years old. And it changed him. He feels like it made him like a pacifist, where the rest of his brothers all wound up in trouble. He actually moved from his hometown to a rural spot so that he wouldn't get into trouble like the rest of his brothers had. And this guy, it changed his life, and there wasn't talk about abductions and stuff back in 1952. It was like Bud Hopkins. I guess probably the earliest case would be the Boaz case in Brazil, or Kathleen Martin's uncle and aunt, the Betty and Barney Hill case. There was no help out there, and he said that for years his family laughed at him, and he just quit talking about it because he got tired of being ridiculed. And this man is 80 years old, cogent, bright as sharp as a tack, an eloquent man, and he he thanked me profusely after we got off the phone. He said, "You're the first person that ever listened to me and took me seriously. And thank you, thank you, thank you. It means so much." And I think that Paul's probably heard that on certain cases. I mean, there's a gratitude out there for those that have gone through this strange phenomenon, this element of it. It ontologically shocks you. I can tell you that personally. Mm-hmm. I had to rethink my whole existence after having a contact experience. And my wife, I mean, she doesn't remember, she remembers the room flooding with light, and she remembers something hovering over our house, shining light down through our window, but she doesn't remember as much as I do, and she doesn't want to. I mean, she doesn't want to, UFOs are my thing, We were out, in wine country yesterday. It was like, no UFO talk, Earl. It's like, okay, I'll try, Of course, I couldn't help it at some point, but, yeah. But anyway, I love what I do with the ERT, and we're there for you guys. If anything that I'm talking about sounds familiar to you, you just go to MUFON.com. You can click on report an abduction, report an entity, and there's a 30-question questionnaire that'll get you started. And if you desire it, you can speak with somebody like myself or Paul, who is a non-judgmental listener and understands this stuff.
Okay, Ben, you got another?
I do. We have not a ton of time, but I guess 25 words or less. Do you think we know more now about the phenomena than we did even 50, 100, more than our ancestors?
I think so. I think that just the conversation we're having here, you wouldn't have had with somebody like 30 years ago. I mean, there was a big, and it's still a big question mark, a lot of this. But I can see a continuity with this phenomenon, and I think that it's been slowly saturating us as a culture. And I think that now people can talk about this more readily and not necessarily be laughed out of town. It used to be I'd go on these shows even 6-7 years ago, and they'd be playing the X-Files theme,
Yeah. Well, now, Earl,
there's yes.
We're almost out of time, but where can people find out more about you and your music, which we didn't even have a chance to get into?
Well, I'm on Facebook is my main social media thing. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but what can I say? I'm over 60, so but I'm trying to kind of dip my toe in there. But find me as Earl Grey, because that's my musician handle. My grandkids call me Earl Grey. I'll probably change it to Earl Grey Anderson, because people are kind of using adding my actual last name to my pseudonym now.
Thing.
Yeah, I mean, it came down to needing a clever new handle out there in the LA music scene, and there was one guy that didn't want to book Earl Anderson because one time I didn't have a full house, so we became Earl Grey, sort of like Reggie, what's his name, became Elton, and et cetera, right?
Yeah.
But it works because, I mean, my real name is Earl, and as a ufologist, we bump into the little gray guys, so there you go. And then the Star Trek thing. Yeah.
Okay.
What it is.
All right, fair enough. Okay, well, Earl Grey or Earl Grey Anderson, thank you so much for a great show. Stick with us if you like, and I will we'll be in touch off the air as we always are.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so first of all, a very happy Halloween to all tomorrow. In the ancient Celtic sense, you have a happy Halloween by not dying. So everybody stay safe out there.
Yes. When in doubt, stay safe. So look for us at the New England Parafest in Kittery, Maine. That's on April 22nd and 23rd, 2022. That event will 2023. Geez, I mean, you're behind and $1 short. That event will kick off the week before that on this show on April 16th when the headliners will appear with us.
We'll be at the Para Expo 2023 aboard The USS Salem at Quincy, Massachusetts, May 19th to 21st, will be among the speakers and will broadcast live from the ship on Sunday, May 21st, if all goes well technologically.
Indeed, and you can visit our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com, where you can find over 1,100 hours of our regular shows and special broadcasts since 2008 from CBS Radio, Achieve Radio, and here on WOON, AM, and FM. You can also hear many of these broadcasts on the major podcast platforms, up to and including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify.
Download our show app. It doesn't do a lot, but it doesn't cost anything either. It's free at BehindTheParanormal.com. There's a link right on the main page. You can browse our books on the website as well, along with those of our guest co-hosts at our show website. Again, it's BehindTheParanormal.com.
And coming up next week, that's November 6th, we'll welcome author and researcher Jillian Harris to talk about how to recognize people from your past lives. And you can guess that we'll have plenty of pretty heavy questions.
Leave you today with a thought from contemporary American author Max Lucado. Faith is not the belief that God will do what you want. I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno. And thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey. And we shall see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.